In the time before the moon charted the tides and before the stars carried the names of kings, there was a world untouched by the hands of time. This world was not built on stone or fire, nor did it echo with the clang of metal or the roar of beasts. It was soft, warm, and cradled beneath veils of mist and memory. There, nestled in the heart of a hidden valley untouched by the passage of seasons, lay a garden not found in any book or scroll, the garden before time. This garden was not paradise by perfection, but by harmony. Trees older than memory reached gently into the clouds, their canopies sheltering a land of music and quiet. Rivers of golden water curved in soft arcs through fields of soft moss, and luminous plants glowed gently in the dusk, lighting the paths for barefoot wanderers. The people of this garden did not speak in the way we do now. Their language was of touch, of gesture, of shared dreams beneath moonless skies. They were neither gods nor beasts, but something in between. The first ones, who lived with the breath of the earth in their lungs and the rhythm of the stars in their blood. No wars scarred this land. There was no need. The first ones did not conquer. They remembered. Every stone held a story. Every leaf whispered secrets passed down by wind and root. The garden was alive in ways that the modern world has forgotten. The first ones moved through it as part of its breath, neither above nor below it, but within it. At the center of this garden stood a towering structure not made by hands, but grown, a great spiral tree called Turien, whose bark shimmered like water and whose roots stretched across the valley like veins. It was said that Turien had been the first thing to rise from the earth after the birth of time. The first ones called it the memory tree. Beneath its branches, they gathered each twilight, placing their hands upon its warm surface to relive the dreams of those who had lived before them. It was not immortality they sought. They did not fear death, for to them death was merely another turning of the circle, a return to the soil, a rejoining with the breath of the world. Their lives were marked not by years, but by stories shared and memories carried. And it was these stories that gave the garden its true power. One day, from the distant ridges beyond the valley, a sound unlike any other came, a slow, deep thrum, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The wind shifted, birds flew lower, the luminous plants dimmed. Something stirred beneath the mossy stones and rippling streams, something new. The elders gathered at the base of Turien, hands pressed to its bark. Their eyes closed and the tree shimmered softly beneath their touch. What they saw in their vision was not just a visitor, it was a choice. A lone traveler approached from beyond the forgotten horizon. He wore a cloak of ash, and his skin held the color of dust. His eyes, though tired, held a flame that had never belonged to the garden. He came not with anger, nor hope, but with questions. And questions were the one thing the garden had never needed. His name was Kael, and he had walked far across broken lands and buried oceans, seeking the truth of what had been lost before even legend had taken form. He had heard whispers of the garden in dreams and found its path in carvings buried beneath the oldest stones. He came seeking not power, but remembrance. When the first ones welcomed him, they did so with kindness, though their hearts trembled. His presence was like a mirror that did not reflect. He ate of their fruits, bathed in their rivers, and slept beneath their glowing leaves. But unlike them, he remembered a world of fire and ruin, a world where harmony had been broken and time was a blade that cut without mercy. Each night, Kael sat beneath Turien, eyes closed, hands upon its bark. He saw visions of the first garden. Not this one, but another, older still, now lost. He saw lights that rose from the sea, towers that whispered into the stars, and beings who shaped the skies with thought alone. And he wept, for he knew what had come after. He had walked on bones of giants and slept in ruins that whispered madness. It was then he asked the question, "Why do you not prepare? The world turns, even here." The elders of the garden did not answer with fear. They placed his hand upon the roots of Turien and shared with him a memory, not of war or loss, but of a time when even sorrow had been a song. The garden, they told him, was not eternal. Nothing was. But while it lived, it would remain a light in the long night, a story remembered even when the stars had forgotten their names. But Kael, shaped by fire, could not accept that peace was enough. In his dreams, the garden burned, and from its ashes rose a world of stone and steel, where memory was replaced by conquest and stories by silence. So he made a choice. He carved a message into stone at the edge of the valley, where the wind could carry it beyond the mist. He wrote not of the garden's location, nor its name, but its song. A rhythm of thought and breath that only those with still hearts and open minds could follow. Then he left. The first ones watched him go with quiet eyes, knowing that with his departure, a seed had been planted. A seed that would one day grow into either a new tree of memory or a forest of forgetting. The wind whispered through the towering reeds that lined the river's edge, carrying with it the scents of earth and time. Children of the garden, as they were called, had no name for their land, for they believed naming something placed it in a box, and nothing of the garden could ever be contained. These people spoke not with words, but with patterns carved in wood and stone, in the rhythm of drum beats and the dance of firelight. Language, for them, was sacred. It was passed through memory and movement, the way birds passed wind through feathers to fly. In the second age of the garden, after the long rains and the melting of the glass mountains, the elders gathered to tell the story of how the balance had been kept. The skies, once violent with fire, had calmed. The beasts, once feared, now walked peacefully beside the children. The elders knew this was no accident. It was a pact, old as the stones beneath their feet. At the heart of the garden stood a tree that had never borne fruit nor flowered. Yet its presence was the thread holding the world together. Called Yorin by the oldest among them, it was believed to be the first living thing, born before stars had names. Its bark shimmered faintly with silver dust, and its roots reached deeper than memory. Each generation offered a gift to Yorin, not gold, nor carved idols, but stories. They etched them into thin clay discs and left them at the base of the tree. The idea was simple. If the tree remembered, the world would remain. One such story belonged to a boy named Emmeron. He had been born during the eclipse, a rare event when both the moon and sun disappeared behind the breath of the sky, turning the world into a twilight dream. Elders said children born under such skies were destined to walk between realms. Emmeron was not strong like the others. His arms were thin, and he often coughed when the mist grew thick. But he saw what others could not: shadows that danced when no fire burned, rivers that sang lullabies, and stars that blinked out warnings in strange patterns. He spent hours lying in the grass, whispering questions to beetles and carving spirals into wood. One morning, Emmeron wandered farther than he ever had before. He followed a heron with silver feathers deep into the marshes, where the reeds grew taller than men, and the air shimmered with warmth despite the cold. There, beneath a curtain of vines, he found a stone doorway, half buried in soil. He did not open it, not yet. Instead, he traced the symbols that surrounded it. They were not of the garden. They pulsed faintly with a forgotten energy, and as he touched them, a single word formed in his mind. Eolin. He didn't know what it meant, but he felt it like a memory. Emeron ran back and told the elders, but they looked at him with sorrowful eyes. Some doors are meant to be forgotten, they said. Some names should remain unspoken. But the tree, Yorin, had stirred. Its silver bark grew warmer. Its leaves trembled when none dared approach. The sky above it clouded even as the sun remained bright. The children began to whisper that the balance was shifting again. That night, Emeron sat by the roots of Yorin. He brought with him no clay disc, no carved word. Instead, he closed his eyes and whispered a question to the earth. What was Eolin? In his dreams, he was taken beyond the garden, beyond the marshes, beyond even the stars. He stood on a bridge made of wind, watching memories unfold below. Great cities carved into cliffs, beings with translucent skin and long, patient eyes. A voice echoed softly. Eolin was the first breath, the first forgetting, the name of the silence before time sang. When Emeron awoke, he knew what he had to do. He walked alone to the stone doorway and pressed his hand against it. This time the door opened. Behind it was not darkness, but light so pale it was almost white. It hummed softly, like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. The space beyond held relics, globes that spun with no touch, feathers from birds that no longer existed, scrolls that glowed faintly with unread stories. Emeron understood then that the garden was not the beginning. It was the last island of memory. Everything beyond had been forgotten, and only Yorin had kept the thread alive. He returned and carved a new disc, not with his name, but with the word Eolin. He placed it at the base of Yorin, and for the first time in memory, the tree bloomed. Its blossoms were soft and pale, smelling of starlight and ash. The garden grew silent as every soul turned toward the tree. The balance had shifted again, but not into chaos, into awakening. From that day, the garden was no longer the only memory. Now others would remember too, would. The rain had stopped by the time Naru and the elders reached the valley floor. The scent of wet earth filled their nostrils, and the sound of dripping leaves echoed between the high cliffs. It was here that they found something astonishing. Patterns of stone, half buried, arranged in spirals and circles, unlike anything made by nature. Naru crouched beside one of the stones and brushed away the soil with his fingers. The markings were deliberate, etched symbols in a language none of them knew. It was clear. This valley had once been home to something ancient, something older than their tribe's oldest tales. "This is not our doing," murmured Elder Voya, touching the edge of the stone. "These are the signs of a people who watched the sky and spoke to the earth." Days turned into weeks as they camped in the valley, carefully unearthing more of the forgotten garden. Beneath layers of soil, they found canals shaped like constellations, gardens laid out like spiraling galaxies, and statues of beasts that no longer walked the earth. The place was alive with mystery. Naru, now filled with a sense of purpose, recorded each finding in a carved wooden journal. He understood that these relics were not meant to frighten, but to guide, to pass on wisdom lost in the turning of the world. One morning, As mist hovered above the valley floor, Naru discovered something that made him stop breathing. A stone mural buried beneath a collapsed wall. It depicted a great flood, a fire in the sky, and figures raising their hands toward a glowing sphere. At the mural's base was an image that mirrored his own face. He staggered back, his heart pounding. The elders gathered around, and silence fell. Elder Sona whispered, "It is not just history, it is a prophecy." That night, Naru sat alone by the fire. He stared into the flames, the mural's images dancing in his memory. Could he be a bridge between what was and what would be? Could the whispers of a vanished world speak through him to those yet to come? As the stars wheeled above, he made a vow, not of conquest, not of discovery, but of remembrance. He would become the voice of those who came before. He would tell their stories as they once were, and perhaps the world might listen. The valley became a sacred place. Travelers came from far away to hear the tale of the garden that sang with stone, the boy who read the sky, and the tribe that chose to remember. And in quiet moments, when the wind passed over the ancient stones, it seemed to whisper thanks. For the past was no longer lost. It had simply been waiting for someone to listen. The waters receded, but they left behind silence. The sky no longer hummed with the mystery of falling lights, and the land that once pulsed with warmth was now cool, bare, and humbled. Trees stood like frozen witnesses, and rivers whispered of what they had swallowed. For days, the people of the valley wandered through the changed world, searching for signs that the great garden could be revived. The elders spoke of legends, of seeds that could grow even in ash, and of birds that would return when the earth forgave the sky. Amaru, whose hands once knew only how to shape clay, now knew how to search the stars. He became the keeper of memories, collecting stories from those who survived, the dreamers, the farmers, the stargazers. He sketched symbols into stone, not for art, but for remembrance. The children born after the flood did not speak the tongue of the old ones, yet they played among the broken statues and painted their own stories in red ochre. They danced where the flames had once circled, not in fear, but to remember the rhythm of what was lost. Time passed. The once clear knowledge of the garden faded into parable. The machines that hummed beneath the earth were buried deeper by root and rain. The stars returned to their quiet, unblinking vigil, and the wind spoke in riddles once more. But something remained. In the farthest edge of the valley, where the stone giants leaned into the horizon and the air smelled of salt and thyme, Amaru built a circle of markers. Each stone stood for a moment, a person, a promise. There were no names, only symbols, spirals, waves, and eyes that told the story in silence. He called it the memory ring. On the night of the 5th winter, as snow settled on the last of the elders' roofs, Amaru sat in the center of the memory ring and sang a low, ancient tune. The ground beneath him warmed slightly, and a small sprout pushed its way through the frost. No one saw it, no one but the stars, but it was enough. Years became generations. The people moved, changed, forgot, and sometimes returned. They found the memory ring and wondered at its purpose. Some believed it marked a tomb. Others thought it was a map. A few heard music when they stood in its center. One child, centuries after Amaru's bones had become dust, placed a stone of her own in the ring. It was smooth, shaped like a tear, and painted with a spiral. She did not know why she placed it there, only that she should. And so the garden endured, not as a place, but as a memory. A whisper passed between the wind and the earth. It is said that when the world is ready once more, when silence outweighs the noise and curiosity returns to the hearts of wanderers, the garden will bloom again. And in that garden, the voices of those who remembered will be heard in the rustle of leaves, the hum of bees, and the dreams of those who sleep beside the fire. For before the cities, before the empires, before the noise of machines and the blinding light of forgetting, there was a garden. And before humans, there were the keepers of the first dream. And so, the garden faded into legend, its roots buried beneath centuries of earth and memory. But what if I told you that before this garden, before the ice, before even the cities beneath the sea, there was a moment when the sky rained fire and the world itself began to change? In our next journey, we'll uncover the untold tale of the sky that burned, when fire touched the earth, a forgotten age of ash, thunder, and awakening life. So if your eyes are still open, close them now, breathe, and drift into the next story where the fire waits. Subscribe now and turn on the bell. Your next bedtime journey begins soon.